I'm excited this morning. Welcome to this episode of Black Bee Podcast. My name is John Washington, and I'm your host. And hey, listen, we are definitely trying to continue this whole topic along these lines of looking at what this whole technology thing is really where it's driving us. How who's driving it? Or is it driving us? Are we driving it? Yada yada. But today, I have my executive producer here with me today again at the table because she loves this interesting topic stuff here. So welcome, Fawn Aberson. We appreciate you joining us today. So, Fawn, so tell me, who do we got here with us today?
Oh, thanks, John. Yeah, as you know, our next issue of Flossin Magazine is based upon technology. We're calling it TechWOWlogy. So our guest today is Fidel Ferrer. He's the president and founder of the Project LEDO. Project LEDO aims to provide access to science and technology programs for children from the BIPOC community and in low-income communities. And Fidel's inspiring journey and dedication to empowering underrepresented communities has earned him recognition in the Portland Business Journal, right? One of the executive directors of the year for social impact, right? And also, you were the recent facilitator at the Silicon Forest, not the Silicon Valley, the Silicon Forest.
Oh, they got a Silicon Forest someplace now? Oh,
Tech
damn.
Summit. That's what Oregon calls it,
Can you see for the
right?
trees for the forest, huh?
We don't, So, which I think they said at the Tech Summit was the first ever.
Yep, that's the first ever.
But some interesting organizers, and you wound up there. So, anyway, welcome, Fidel. And
welcome, Fidel. Man, I am so excited. And what makes this excited for me is that, when you tell a story like this, when you tend to, if you've been around as long as I have been, you tend to put a face. You become a little bit premeditated about it. You put a face to it, right? Yeah. But boy, when they told me, boy, this brother's from Cuba, achieving all these things, that really did make me excited because, I'm an East Coast kind of guy. And, I grew up with a lot of Puerto Ricans, a lot of Cubans, a lot of Haitians, and it's a different kind of a Latin beat, back on the East, and Quieto Negro, right?
Yeah, there you go.
And this brother here represents all of it, because when you get out here, get out on the west side, of the world, you're dealing with Latinos that are from Mexico, Quieto Blanco, they're kind of a lighter, it's just the whole policy and the whole way of, So how'd you wind up, well, I can see it when I say you're dark-skinned, right? Yeah. I can understand how you might have fit in and they might have mistaken you, but I'm sure you brought a whole lot of your values and a whole lot of your thoughts. So, man, how you wind up out here?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and especially I'm thank you for you guys to bring the spotlight. I always say that I don't want to be the spotlight. I want to create a spotlight. I want to create a platform. So thank you for allowing me to share the story. That way it can build a platform for others to walk through at the same time.
Come on with your bad stuff.
But with that spirit, it's the same thing, the same sentiment. I'm dark skinned, I'm black, but I didn't grow up here, but I'm Latino because I speak Spanish. Yeah. And then the Latino population at times doesn't resemble that demographic. It's kind of like all these diaspora that you find yourself in. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to even break it through because you're where you fit in, right? Yeah. And that's kind of the whole message is you don't have to fit in any category as long as you align with core values that lets you move forward.
But the boy, he came in with some brains too, huh? Core values. Yeah. But it's interesting when they start talking like that, boy, you better pay attention. So tell me, man, Don, give me a little bit about your background, man. I mean, when you grew up, how you grew up, man, because a Cuban, did you grow up in Cuba?
Yeah, I did grow up in Cuba.
Wow. So in Cuba, and excuse me for sounding like, I'm not, the world is not a small place, but how would in Cuba, when you got all those beautiful beaches and all those lovely values and different, and then of course you got right. Fidel Castro and cigars and rum and all that. How you get on the track and what you got on, man. What you know?
Or what was growing up in Cuba like? For
Yeah.
them,
Yeah,
right?
or yeah, and then what would make him when he looked at this whole notion of I'm gonna get out of here,
Yep.
but I'm gonna head to the whitest city in America.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know
that's
what I'm
a
saying?
really good question. So
Uh-huh.
I grew up by a single mom. Like my dad left when we were little kids. He managed to like put himself into something that it's called lottery visa, which is the ability that the Cubans had at the time when Fidel Castro was
Right,
alive. To come to the States. So the section of interest in the United States had a place in Cuba where it's kind of like winning the lottery.
Right.
Like you would draw, like you would put your name on a piece of paper, fill out an application and send it out to the section of interest at the time. And if you win the possibility to come to the States, they will sponsor you.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And that's how my dad left.
Wow.
And
See you, Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he left when we were little kids, and then from there it was just a single mom raising two kids because I'm a twin with a girl, and it was it was nothing short but like at times extraordinary, but with a lot of pinpoints and challenges that we face because like it's not I would say a secret that Cuba is a country where there's a lot of restrictions due to the communist, you know, like
Regime,
regime and embargoes and all these different
Yeah.
things that made so that the living situation in Cuba is really bad and sad at times, especially in that period. And now it has become worrisome. Being a single mom trying to like you know pull yourself through and then get those two kids, it was really challenging.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah.
But
So
welcome to America.
Yeah,
though,
but I
brother.
mean, so
You
but
know.
what was the lifestyle like in Cuba though? Then what was the culture and stuff? Because I know politically, you know, there was what it was, but you know the quality of life
Yes.
as a youth in Cuba. What do you recall?
Yeah, what I do have to think the social kind of like infrastructure in Cuba is for the ability to build community around, because there's no other thing than just that, right?
Yeah.
And that community comes from like you don't have sugar and you go to the neighbor's house and say, hey, can you give me like 2 spoons of sugar or like 1 spoon of salt that we don't have, and like walking and barefoot. I remember with like just like a short barefoot, nothing up, and then you will be like
that's right.
going through through a life and then building relationships and friendships around that.
And the food and the culture,
food and
right?
the
Because this is
culture.
what John loves is Cuba.
yeah.
Every day,
Yeah.
like, well, let's
Cuba.
go to that Cuban
yeah,
place, Cuban place,
they,
right?
No, they
So-
know how to eat.
Well,
Shit,
yeah.
they eat
but
the
it
right
sounds
food,
like
food.
you know the food wasn't just about eating; it was about a whole
community.
neighborhood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole
It was
thing,
the thing to gather around
Yep.
or
Brings
to
it to-
converse on
Yep.
because that you know there wasn't a lot of other.
Exactly. And in fact, like there was not that much food, so they have to be really innovative with the food that they had and how we can share the wealth through other families around, like in like the other villages or the other like neighborhoods around, right? And culturally, like music is like one of the biggest things, right?
Oh,
that
yeah.
Cuba has, and because
Mozambique.
yeah, you know,
man. I mean, but
yeah,
I'm
and
a drummer
salsa. That's
myself,
when that's what salsa started.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, salsa music
Yeah.
started in Cuba, and then you bring all these elements of like the passion and the creativity that they
Yeah.
have.
Mark
And-
Anthony played some big Cuban, right, in some movie.
Girl, you
recently,
and Mark
some-
Anthony, but that's
No, I'm
Yeah,
saying
that's
he
Puerto
played.
Rico.
It was
That's in
on
Puerto
Netflix.
Rico.
Yeah,
That was
Puerto
Puerto
Rico.
Rico.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
Puerto
Sorry,
Rico.
sorry.
But they're mistaken. So the Haiti is also
Okay,
thrown in this
sorry,
pile
yeah.
a little bit
Yeah.
too. And so, but it's okay, man. So you came with a little set of skills also.
But John,
that was
don't you want to
hidden.
know what his favorite Cuban food is?
No, I already
This-
know.
oh,
man.
what is it?
What is it?
Bananas.
What is
There
it?
you go. There you go.
You ain't got, if you ain't got fried bananas, you ain't got shit. Come on, talk to me.
There you go.
Because everybody talk about the mashed beans and rice.
There
Look,
you go.
man, whole beans and rice and bananas. You ain't got, and then get them pork. The rest of that shit, you gonna do what you got to do with it, right?
That's right. That's right.
But,
We got it on.
Okay,
But
so,
so-
you still cooking today? You making?
Yeah, at times, you know, I happen to not have that much time to cook, but I found on this like on Trader Joe's these like boxes that they're frozen,
Yeah.
but they're kind of like similar to like it reminds me a lot to like the Cuban food because they have like the beans and the bananas.
Yeah,
and a little
yeah.
bit of a
No,
chicken
I've been
and pork.
actually that's weird because lately I've been cruising through those frozen aisles in Trader Joe's. Lately, I've been finding some pretty interesting things there. I gotta take a look at that.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm finding fun that's really fascinating as he tells the story, is that he came with as you fast track him through, and we're not gonna we're gonna let him tell the story, but he came with a set of skills.
Yeah.
You know, so he had a vision, or he had an internal sense of what homogeneous or familia or all that stuff was really all about. Community was all about. So you got here to the States. Did you get here as a young man and you finished high school, or did you get here and go to high school and
how'd
all
you come
that
across
stuff?
that water?
Yeah, so I came right like young, but I came right in the pinpoint of like when I was back home. Like you can go from high school straight to the grad program, which is like dental school.
Oh.
So in Cuba, I mean, which is dental school, meaning like I went to that route. Like I went to dental school back home. And
What?
Yeah, that kind of like,
John.
which I didn't actually.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Well,
Can you look at my mouth?
Look here, maybe his computer can do it, but later on, right? You
Yeah,
know.
and through there it shortens it because you don't have to do the 4-year like undergrad and then apply it and all these different things. But even as a little boy, I always was in tune with my community, and I couldn't articulate it at the time, but I really want to put myself into service somehow.
Yeah, man.
And I dreamed that one day I would, my ideal like life where when they say when are you gonna do like what do you want to do when you grow up, it was like to go to Africa and like and help. That was always my thing, right? I used to like be in the backyard or even like in the front yard of the house, and I would like look at the stars. I would be like, I want to make some sort of impact, and I knew that my reality would not allow me to do so at the time, but I knew that something else will come alongside.
Wow.
And
wow, that's vision, man. That's vision, yeah.
that's correct.
Yeah, dream, yeah.
Yeah, that's vision, that's dream.
Yeah.
And when I moved here, all of that kind of like got tainted because I didn't know English at first. I didn't know anything around the system and the society and everything else. So when you look at like, let's backtrack. Like in Cuba, U.S. is always the bad.
It's
Right.
bad.
Yeah. It's like bad, like the Cuban propaganda, right? Like like this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad.
Death to America.
Yeah, these American and all that. But we know intrinsically that not all things are like what they say in the propaganda.
Right.
And people dream big also about like moving out or leaving out of the country and experience a different life.
Right.
And man, like we try to aim for that dream. For some, it becomes a reality, but for some others, it doesn't become a reality. And what is really, I would say, devastating is when you see so many people trying to like make that dream come a reality, and they perish for a lot of different reasons. So
you the success story, man.
But
You made it.
did your mom come with you?
Yeah, my mom came with me. My sister came with me.
Okay.
My dad was here. He was the one who actually claimed us.
Okay,
Right.
so then there was some reconciliation.
Yeah, there was some
Oh.
reconciliation there. He claimed us. He actually lives in Oregon. But when you think about like U.S., you think about New York, you think about Florida, you think about like California,
Yeah,
where you
10
would never
big ones,
guess.
yeah.
Like, and that's
Portland,
what Portland, Oregon, like who that is,
Yeah.
right? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
You know?
No, I'm with you, man, because I found it by
I'm
mistake
going where?
myself.
Where am I going?
Yep.
You know, I would have never thought I was going to end up here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And then like I remember when I like first landed, I was like with like sandals, like flip-flops actually.
Yeah.
And like a t-shirt.
Yeah.
And it was like
you was
January.
playing the part.
Yeah.
Flip flops and a T-shirt.
And it was so cold.
Yeah.
You know, really cold.
Yeah, I can imagine, bro.
Yeah.
Really close. So you landed here. Did you do any high school or anything here before you got into college, or did you just come get there?
I did go to PCC,
Okay.
and then to learn like ESL classes, because
Yeah.
at the time I honestly didn't speak a word in English.
Wow.
And in PCC, they kind of like accelerated me.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
because like
Yeah.
I was really committed to like make something of myself, and in the process, I really needed to learn English, and I became a teacher assistant at PCC,
Wow.
and then I brought a lot of transcripts from high school and then all the stuff and college and everything, and they pretty much like say, okay, like you're on your path to be in college, right?
You had all the requirements.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there is a lot
Yeah.
of Spanish supported resources.
Yeah.
Isn't there at
Yep.
PCC and
Yep.
and Oregon,
Yep.
kind of, right? I
Yep.
mean, they are a state kind of set up to
Yep.
integrate Spanish and English and things like that.
Yeah.
So he's a PCC success story, which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
great.
Yay for that.
So
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, good to them. So
Yeah.
then you got in the PSU.
Yeah.
Now
And
now you're smoking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
I am at
yeah.
PSU. At the beginning it was
Yeah.
yeah, that's
exactly.
right. That's what it is.
Yeah, you know.
And at the beginning, I must say that it was really hard, like really tremendous, like really, really hard, because I wanted it to go to college, but even like I believe young like people here, they're not prepared at times if they don't speak the same language or they don't grow up with like parents that they've gone to college.
Oh, for sure.
And going around and see what could like be possible, and kind of like creating that roadmap for them.
Yeah, so you were a first family member
Here,
to
yep.
go into
And-
college.
and
And then
Yeah.
trying to navigate these complex systems
yeah.
on your own,
Yeah.
probably with
Exactly.
support, but you
Yeah.
know you're
Exactly.
the first one doing
Yep.
it in
Yeah.
your network.
Yeah, on
Right.
my own, and the advisors at the time, they were not kind of like quite aligned, because when you go to those like advisory, everyone tells you something and they should expect you to know at least a little bit of something that in reality I didn't know anything. So I would like sign up for classes, and I didn't know that I needed to drop off for classes. I didn't know that there was a curriculum that you need to follow, and then they will get those bills in like at home, and then I'll be like, how much, and then why, and then I didn't even know that we needed to
Yeah.
apply for FAFSA. Like,
Yeah.
all of that was
Yeah.
new
Oh,
for
wow,
me.
yeah. Oh God, scary
Yeah.
stuff though.
Yep.
Right?
Well, but it's part of the bind or the combine that America sends its third world people or those types of indigenous
Low-income
people,
or
and
disadvantaged.
that's part of the maze, man. That's part of the hang up and that's why when we're talking about navigating these complex systems, the essential need for the support to assist people to help them now. Because if you're a first-time college attender in your family, and I remember the same thing with mine, man. I got to a certain part, though. My dad, he ended in third grade. My mom, she had a couple years of college, but nobody could advise you on the forms that came, how to pick your classes, none. And let alone, we got into a whoop-de, and I had a major scholarship, man, Paul Robeson scholarship to a Ivy League school. And, I couldn't even get a ride to the campus. When we did get that, I drove down there, and I didn't even have no license. You know what I'm saying?
That's
So,
right.
and then, and if it wasn't for the people on campus who understood when that smoking car put that cat out on the sidewalk with a pillowcase and a paper bag with his stuff, it was them brothers came out and they put their arms around me, and they picked up my stuff and they walked me into the college, and they assisted me through that process. So as I hear you talk, was there any kind of significant mentors or anybody that you picked up along the way to help you navigate this complex system, man, by yourself?
At the time, no, and that's what made it really hard for me. And that's why, to be honest, the reason why I started a Project LEDO, because I was so alone, and I felt like really alone at the time. But I knew that somehow everything will work out for the better, because that's who I am. Like, I put my mind into something, and I really go through, and then like I don't stop until I see it through all the way.
Yeah, man.
And
That's a good methodology to attain and to achieve as a young man. That's a real strong one. I
So,
reinforce that
Yeah.
in you.
What were the classes you were taking? Because obviously, even in Cuba, you were in a STEM,
Yeah.
right? Science, technology.
Yeah.
You were dentistry.
Yeah.
Dentistry, isn't that science?
Yeah.
Right. So were you gravitating to those kind of classes, or what kind of classes were you taking?
Yeah, I was like, when I got myself around, I realized that I needed to do the pre-courses, like the pre-dental route. So, and then they
Oh,
have
you were
like
still gonna do that?
pre-requirements. Yeah, I
Okay.
still wanted to do that. That was the dream. And I had to involve into chemistry, and then I had to involve into biology. I had to involve into organic chemistry, physics, anatomy and physiology, biochemistry. All of those courses that they are like hardly enough for, like natives.
Right.
Imagine being,
English
like
speaking, yeah.
English speaking natives. Like imagine.
No, I don't imagine
Yeah.
that. I ain't tried.
Taking those same classes.
Give me a headache already.
That's
Think about
right.
it.
Oh my God! Right.
And then when you see like a auditorium full of 300 people, like you see it in like maybe in like movies and stuff, and you see the professor down there, and then they're just speaking things out of
lecture,
like all those lectures, and then you're sitting down there. I'm like, where am I? Right. And I'm like, really? That's the first. That's the first, and the like. I would come home and I would be like, I don't know. So my confidence took a big hit there.
Confidence.
Like because I was like, I cannot, like I have this aspiration, I have the dream. I wish they would have known the capabilities that I have, but there's like, this is not meant for me at the time. And I was like really like grasping every single thing. So I will go to office hours and I'll make myself available all the time. And through that process of like kind of like building that resilience, you see like what helps and what works for me. I found this, it's kind of like an affiliation called LSAMP, which is like Louis Stroke for minority practitioners in STEM. And they have created that program at PSU.
I remember LSAP.
Yeah. And through that, I found more of a what you mentioned, like more like a support system.
Yeah.
And I got some scholarships that got me through, like understand a little bit more the system, and then like getting more in tune with myself, and then having all these like bills that I had like paid off and things like that, and it became like my confidence started like to boost again. So and all of a sudden now I am like the mentor for other people in that program. So like to get the BIPOC communities or anyone that feels like underrepresented in specifically in that field, like validated and have a place to. So I became a tutor of organic chemistry, and I was like having now like a group of folks that I would like teach them through and then collaborate and do all these different things. And that's how I kind of like my confidence started like to boost up again, and like sharing more resources with the community around. And that's how, like after LSAMP, I think that I started it, like I'm like, okay, now I think I belong here, because I found those people, right, that could like see me as who I am, and then meet me where I'm at to kind of like keep moving forward.
And as I see the foundation fund, he didn't take no easy like like me. I was taking urban studies and art design and all that kind. He didn't take too many of them easy classes, man. But well, some of it was
a propensity.
I liked the creative drawing part. But
it
some
did,
of them classes.
it did seem like he had a propensity even.
The grass
to Cuba,
right.
know, where like, you're gonna be in dental school, right?
Yeah,
and
he had his foundation was already forming for him to basically guide him in the direction
added
that
barriers
he wind up.
of language and new space and place, new culture, and that kind of stuff.
Hey man, the cat's a player, man. You can't keep a player down. So what's the deal?
Yeah,
so we can keep on moving though.
Okay.
It's like
so then PSU. So how did the Apple? So what happened after?
Yeah, how'd you get into technology?
For
because
sure.
we looking for the bridge, right?
Take
it to the bridge.
They can see the bridge.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so there you go. So from there, I started it to work in several research, because building up the curriculum, that way I could apply and make myself a competitive candidate to go into the dental route still, right?
Oh yeah. Okay.
I started working at a research OHSU, PSU, and I love research. We actually like published a couple of articles in both places, and I was a co-author in a couple of them. But then I felt that although research is like a really good realm, it prevented me to interact with people, right? And that's something that I've always been passionate about, right? I'm like I would say an introverted by heart, and I channels my extrovertiveness to achieve the dreams that I have.
Yeah, man.
And through that process, I was like, I really just wanted it to get a easy, simple job that I could do, that I can connect with folks, because like the research environment, it's really hard paced, it's really draining. You don't see, like, for instance, I was doing molecular biology, so I would not see people for long periods of time. I would just get emails and say, hey, you have to sequence confirm this, or you have to like do this FICOL, you have to do this like PCR.
It's isolating.
Yeah. And at the time, once again, like, it's like all about that. It's like it didn't feel, even though the team was, I would say, diverse in some essence, but in the true core values, it wasn't, right? So, and I could see the isolation even from myself within the team that I was working on at the time. And I was like, I don't know, like I really wanted to experience something different. And then that's when I got the call from Apple, because I had put my profile in their website and said, hey, would you want to join us? And that's how everything started with Apple.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, vicariously, you know. So, you
So
know,
now- okay.
either way, I understand your technical mind, but I'm looking at mine from a spiritual side. I mean, when you look at the pathology of an individual and their growth in their life, you know, you'd be amazed at how much the beginning plays a part in that trajectory. You know, it's like, you know, something happens to you before the age of 13, and somewhere in that it stuffs you in a cannon, and somewhere along that you're just waiting, and you may have your hand on that string to pop that cannon, but whatever, something pops that cannon and shoots you in a direction. And ain't no telling where you're gonna land necessarily, but
that's correct.
You done shot out of there, you know. But you got a backpack on full of stuff that you had already got, right? And then all of a sudden you land, and then it goes, you're here now, unpack, you got to survive. And so God, and it's amazing how your determination and accelerance because in the field in which he came through, I would have gave up.
So
I'm going back home. Shit, you know.
Because- and you guys can speak to this, but John, you always talk about the IQ, the AQ, and the EQ.
Yeah,
right?
no, the
intellect.
AQ, EQ, and IQ, EQ, and AQ. You're right.
Right. So the intellect, the adaptability, and the emotional
Yes, that's correct.
ability to navigate the system. Right. So with you, despite the barriers, you had the intellect, right? You
Obviously.
know, the language, right? Because the way you're describing it, not only did you have to learn Spanish, but you did have some accomplishment in the
Not Spanish,
medical
he had
language,
to learn
or the
English.
right.
He had to-
All those acronyms that you were dropping, like I don't know what you were saying, but that was a
remember,
whole
like,
language of
yes,
its own to the
that's right.
industry, right? So you had to learn that too, or you had some knowledge of that. But the adaptability, right? To say like, I'm going to. Were there times where you felt like I'm done? I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna go do. I'm gonna get a different path or something. Did you want to walk away?
Hey, Fawn, but I want to know what happened with Apple. Before you moved.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What was the deal with Apple? How did that help you?
It helped me tremendously, though. Like, Apple has been one of the greatest places that I've ever worked for, and that I ever worked for. Yeah, despite, because in time, there's a friend of mine that worked with me in the team, the global operations and strategy for the R&D at Apple. She always said, never waste a crisis. And I took that by heart, because at times our community sometimes, we are accustomed to feel sorry for ourselves in some essence, right? Like, and I'm not gonna speak with to the whole community. I'm not gonna generalize it,
right.
But at times, yes, like there will be times where you will be misunderrepresented. There will be times when there's gonna be a hardship, but like they always say, to whom much has been given, much is required.
Oh, careful, boy! You're growing up.
And I've been given the possibility to be here in the States. So for me, it was always the hunger of like not wasting that possibility. And although, at times I felt disappointed and I felt like why this is happening to me, I saw myself like going into the med field and the dental field and establish myself. But you also have to be in tune. And as I realized it later on of like the gift and the calling that it's being upon you before your aspirations to do something outside of that gift. So
he said what you've been hearing me say for how many years now? That's 20 years. You know, it's the gift is not for everybody, and for those people who can see it early enough to be able to have some type of commitment to at least see it through and to fulfill it. You know, the voice don't never go away.
Yep.
You know, it's always that nagging. Surely you realize I should be doing something better than this.
Yeah,
right?
that's
you know,
correct.
Like, but there are some people that button is broken.
Yep.
And as you said, I mean, but I don't necessarily think it's a natural condition of the human experience. I believe that it's one that is cultivated.
Yep.
You know, and so, and then when you get these opportunities to proliferate or see an opportunity. You know, sometimes you take your shot, sometimes you hit, and sometimes you don't. But at least you took the shot.
Exactly.
You know, and that's the key. Yeah.
No, that's exactly the key. Like for me, I was like so accustomed and in tune to be a dentist, but there was all these other rooms. Like that's what the adaptability comes to place, because like you always want it. Like as I mentioned before, even as a little boy, I was always like, I really know that I wanted to do an impact, that I really know that I want to be myself in the position of service. I didn't know how. Like, I thought that the dental route would be the how, because as I was like growing up, that's kind of like, that's the circumstances at that time. Right. That's what I accustomed me to. Right. But then when you come here and then you are kind of like try to fight and try to go through and try to do this, and then these other opportunities are opening up, which actually goes within the same along lines with a gift. And I'm like, I can't fight. You gotta work with the flow with the gift that you've been given.
Yeah, and that's not it. And I'm gonna tell you, that's not easy. Maybe when you got it as a young man, it might be an easy adaptable. You know, because when you think about the times that I come from, most things were pretty well strategically logical next steps, right? But you're living in a time where rapid change and transition is happening so quickly that if you don't have the ability to be adaptable to those shifts in style and shifting, man, it's you're being left.
Yep.
And I said that a long time, even with technology, man. I said, it was so clear that these 35-year-old white dudes came up with something, right? and the train left the track, right?
That's correct.
And they left the track, they got down the track, and all of a sudden they stopped and they said, damn, we ain't got no women on this train, right? Mm-hmm. So they stopped the train somewhere on the where they was going and said, let's get some women on this train. Yeah. But then once they got down the track a little bit, they needed some music and some fun and some excitement and some different perspectives. Hell, we left some of them minority people behind. Yeah. So they stopped the train and came. And here we are today. And then, man, so I'm really excited to see that the opportunities, if players get the opportunity to play in the arena in which they're good at it, most likely they're going to give you a good show.
Yep.
So what have you gotten for yourself? And then obviously we have a formula around Flossin, and Flossin simply means success is philanthropic.
Yep.
It doesn't end with just you being successful. Mm-hmm. What's the contribution, man? What's the give back? I mean, because that's basically, and for those of you out there that don't see it like that, hey, look, there's more than one way, to bring to light formulas for successful living. That's what we are doing here, and it don't necessarily have to be ours. It could just those ones that are out there. That's why Fidel's sitting here right now.
That's right.
And so we're excited about so what are you bringing back, man? I
think that, and that's a really good question, because I think the contribution to it is like two things. First, like, you don't know what you don't know, in a sense of like, if I would not have come to the States, I wouldn't have known the possibilities that one could have, right? So in that realm, you have to be able to, it takes one to teach one, to share one, right? Like, you have to be able to know what your capabilities are and go after them. And if that's the case, you got to go back and reach out to someone and say, hey, look what all these things are at in terms of resources, and share that back too. Yeah. And then the other thing that is so important, that's why we're doing what we're doing, is that I heard from someone, and forgive me my misquoting, like when in the choir everyone sings the same note, there's no harmony, right? So
that was the original definition of diversity.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And that is exactly what we try to do. Like, and this is not something new. This is not something, all these ideas of diverse and included environment, this is not something new, because our communities have faced that every single time. This might be something new that we're putting attention to, and then that's when you put your attention, you put your intention. So like when you look at companies that they're putting the attention and the intention to have a harmony in the organization, that's when the organization move forward, and that may be what Apple is doing, even though it's pain points, knowing that there is no a clear pathway to it, If it was a clear pathway to see, hey, like we're diverse and then we have this and then we have this figured out, then there's no progress.
Got you. Now, let me ask you this, Fidel. And now we're going to get a little bit more philosophical in this reality. I mean, when you consider navigating as you do, right, and you come to Apple with a skill set that is unique in its sense, because not only do you bring the community, not only do you bring this whole notion of desire and drive for liberation and freedom and excel, and then we talk about those things that historically have binded people, right? The complications of not knowing, how to navigate a complicated system, which we know is intrinsic in the system to be able to somehow or another. Once you have identified it, it's easily manipulated, right? We can manipulate that conceptual understanding, but how do you get now that technology in itself? Now, them white cats took off on that train, and now there's probably a lot of people on that train, and that train is probably experiencing the same things as our society is experiencing, right? And that is that you may be able to share in the wealth and prosperity on that train, but we still all have our different views on how to go about doing that. But now I hear that technology is being used to engage community also. So what's kind of fascinating for me is when you got an individual, I can see where Apple's benefit would be to have a person like yourself in that space. So how is technology effectively helping us to engage community and to somehow or another bring some solutions to some of the woes that we have going on in our communities?
I mean, it's like, and I honestly, and I can't speak for Apple, but what I've witnessed is, first of all, it's like listening to our communities, because the majority of revenue at times that we can generate from a company, it comes from communities, like untapped communities, right? And then we're not talking about like in terms of like cash flow and money, and we're talking about intentional development. And then when you do intentional development in companies that they are forefront to invest in the BIPOC communities on any minority community, is when you see the real wealth. If you're talking about building wealth, you got to untap those communities, and the more you untap on them, then the more you understand them, the more they understand, like the nuances of like the technology that is moving really rapidly, the more wealth we can be able to bring, and then the more wealth they can be able to generate themselves. And I've seen that in like...
Yeah, he just said something, man, because that nuance is really what's fascinating, and I didn't think about that, because even you may have an instrument, right, a wrench or a machine, and from a cultural standpoint of view, its utilization is going to always be a little different, right? People in India might use this technology different and arrive to a different kind of outcome, whereas people in Kuwait or someplace else might. So that's what I find there is what I find to be the fascinating intersection.
Yep.
You know, and how that technology is being accessed, and what would drive a company like Apple to be more inclusive with that technology. Yeah, that's
and
wild,
and that's
man.
what it is. Like in companies like Apple, companies like maybe Intel that they're doing a lot of work too. Like it's more of like you can get, for instance, like even like our community is better health. Right, you know, like African Americans have been known to have a little bit more of a higher blood pressure just by default. Like it's
By
genetics.
conditions, right?
You
Not
see what I'm
just
saying?
genetic shit.
And
you mean the ass whooping.
Exactly.
Society in which we live in.
Yeah, but if we don't, if we segment our data or research, especially in it's like in a small demographic, and we don't see the whole realm, you're never gonna address the real issue, right?
I think, you know, what I'm seeing, though, Fidel, is that your experience in research and development, right, which is a critical part of the project, right? So when you look at technology and you look at it from projects like, oh, I've got to get this this chip done. I've got to get this because it's going to, in the end up, do this thing, right? But it first starts with research and development, right? Which ironically, you ended up in at PSU, right? Which is critical in any launch of a system. But then when you start to add social impact to it, right? Not just capital impact, right? I'm going to make this, I'm going to make a lot of money, but I'm going to do this, and it's going to impact these people in different ways. And because of your perspective, bringing it to the table, right? I keep thinking, as you're talking, I see you as that kid in that backyard, in that front yard, looking up at that sky, you know, with their, that's the perfect posture, right? Head up, heart open, right?
That's correct.
And then how that posture led you through the path, and you kept seeking the path of, you know, where am I going to make that kid dream of mine? I my purpose is to serve souls, right? My purpose is to serve souls, but I'm taking this vessel there. Right? And so now you're there at Apple, but your purpose from the kid looking up at the sky is still speaking loudly to you. So it spoke so loud that it made you launch your own company.
Yeah, that's correct.
So tell me about your own company, man. So what's
or organization.
Organization. Talk us a little bit.
So, you know, like through this process, like exactly what you said, you cannot say like more eloquently, beautifully. So I'm just trying to like see if I can like match that up. Through that process, I understood that real change happens within, right? And
ooh, that's a Denzel Washington. Me and Brooke got something in common on
that's
that
right.
one. Yeah.
That's right. And because it happens within, we cannot, as communities, expect things to happen to us. It's time for us to happen to the world.
Oh, Lord.
Right? And
look out, world. Fidel on his way, y'all. Come on.
That's right.
Well, you know, go on, man. Drive the car.
Yeah.
Finish.
and then when that happens, I understood that in order for me to like make some sort of impact, I really have to come within, like from my community, right? I am an Afro-Latino, so I speak Spanish, but I don't resemble the Spanish demographic. But I'm black, but at times African Americans are like, well, hold on a second, you're not black. So it's like all that dichotomy that I am caught into, and I'm like, okay, well, let's make it about like creating a place where everyone feel that they belong, and then provide resources for them to actually see themselves in the brighter future. The same thing that I did. And like I started working, I took a leadership class that allowed me to be in contact with one of the schools that we work with. In the just 1 or 2 hours of my week, I would like kind of like come and then do some volunteering, getting them some assistant with like science courses and things like that. And I saw how their heads of these kids started turning. So what it could not see possible, what they didn't even know that it existed, now it became available to them. And then they will like take that and then just run for the wings. And then from that, you gain not only a fulfillment, but you gain the possibility that we were talking about. Like that's how like it happens to the world. Because this kid or this young adult, I would say, will go out there and then see what could be possible. I was at the tech conference the other day, and then there's this guy that approached me, and he said, like my kid, we took a trip to Europe, and he was amazed that the architecture in Europe, they are like 1,500 years and all of that. And he
didn't have to go with it in Europe, though. He could have went to San Francisco, but anyway.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? But the concept was like they're so like well made, and then like they can really last longer.
Yeah.
And in his mind was like, how can I make, like as a little kid, how can we make buildings that they last longer? Fast forward, this is what he was sharing to me. That's what is important, the importance of like education and the importance of like exposure to those things.
Lifting that ceiling of your mind. It's self-imposed ceiling.
Exactly.
Self-imposed.
Exactly right. And at times,
if we're not exposed.
Exactly. And societal exposed at time because they keep you kind
You're
of
right.
like but afterwards, fast forward, he is in architecture. Right.
He shot out the cannon.
Yeah. And he actually is like his specialty is working to create buildings that they have a long lasting living. So I am like, this is what it's all about. This is what Project LEDO is all about. Like providing those resources, allowing the people to see technology and embracing, because like there's, as you mentioned, like the train is already moving.
Yeah, man.
It's whether you want to jump on it and be part of it and break the new stigmas and break the new nuances that comes within, or just be left behind. But we don't want our community, especially in the young age of their lives, to be left behind or to not have the possibility to experience at least what it could be possible.
Wow. Well, you know, my 3 questions come to mind, but for Fidel, and I would like to know those ones. And yes, don't worry. You know, you're still producing. You're on my show right now. Just know that. So, Fidel, if you were to have a room full of young people, and someone asked you, what would be the characteristics or gifts you think, and maybe I don't have a lot of gifts, but what characteristics do you think I should develop in myself at an early stage moving into this? What would some of those characteristics look like as that you would think young people should have in them if they was to ask, well, what should I have, Daddy? You know,
to be available to connect them to their purpose or something, or
to
look at all the options
to be successful. You know, in this world at which because he's obviously a lot younger than you and I. Well, I don't want to date you, but me. And the times are obviously different. If you think about the world since AI has come on, which has been in the last 5 years, it's totally changed in 5 years.
And we're going to jump into that, right?
Okay,
so
well, we
your
can.
Characteristics.
Yeah, well, what would be those?
And you're doing that right now, so we should quickly say that from Apple, you opened your own organization.
Yeah, and just like merging the two, like I think one of the main characteristics that that I can, like, if I had a little, a full room of kids, or
which
if
you
I
do sometimes.
Exactly. The main thing is that don't ever let anyone decide what you can or you cannot do. That's the first thing. You are not going to have a dream that you don't have the capability to fulfill. That's point blank. So that's the main thing. Don't ever let anyone decide like what you can or you cannot do. Second, I would say to them to really reach for like core values that allowed you to, and when I said reach, meaning like really do like a good work throughout as you're growing up, what core values that build core values that led you to understand first who you are, what you're here to do in this world, right? And you don't have to know the how, but the resiliency to fulfill that dream.
Yeah, man.
Right. And the core value isn't like, I'm Fawn Aberson, I want to, be in media. That's not what you're
No,
asking. It would
no.
be like, I'm Fawn Aberson and I want to make an impact through storytelling. Or I
Yeah.
want to connect to people in a meaningful way that allows our shared
Yeah.
knowledge of each other to improve not only ourselves but the community around
Yeah.
us, right? So less focused on
Yeah.
the specific job title and more so when you're talking about
Yeah.
internal core values.
Yeah, and it goes even deeper than that. I believe that when I talk about core values, I talk about really what is my makeup. That it evolves around like years, right? For me, core values are like community. I love my community, right? For me, core values mean family, right? Really big into family. My mom is everything. I feel that I am a piece of what she would ever like, what I would ever be for her, right? Like she has done tremendous things for me to walk what I'm walking right now. Core values mean like honesty, dignity, right? Because you can walk with those to any place that you can be or will be, and therefore tap into what kind of dream I want to fulfill. And that's when it comes to like, I don't want to be like a social media influencer. I want to tell stories.
Right.
That's my dream. I want to tell stories, whether it's a social media, whether it's in a podcast, whether it's a presenter, whether it's a host at a show, but I want to tell stories because the how is what is going to make himself real at a
Whether
point
it's in
in
the
time.
library,
Yeah.
to a bunch of little
Exactly.
kids.
Whether it's in a library and like to reach so many kids. So these are
journal.
or a journal.
Yeah.
These are the kind of things that I'm more focused into, and these are the kind of things that we aim to teach the students. Like we found robotics as a way, and AI, computer building, and all these things as a way to engage them because we don't want to leave our community behind. We want to embrace that. There's a lot of stigma with AI, a lot of stigma with all these different things. But at the same time, that is like, because you can be a good roboticist or you can be a bad roboticist.
The evil, you mean.
Right.
Okay. So, hey, Fidel, well, so let's make that transition a minute. So you started in 2019, you started an organization called LEDO. So what does LEDO stand for?
Yeah, this is a good question. LEDO stands for La Edad de Oro, which is an acronym in Spanish. And translation in English is something on the lines of like the golden age or the gold age. There was a journal that transitioned into a book that's called La Edad de Oro. And in that book, it teaches young kids elements of empathy, love, compassion, care that my mom used to read me when I was a little kid. And those are what build also my core values. And then when I talked about my mom and saying that she's the idol that I like ever want to be, it's because as a young kid, having that backbone with no father figure in my life, she created those moments of like helping me be the man that I want to be through education, through learning what's empathy, what's love, what's compassion, and then you choosing to be and do that way. So LEDO is an honor to that book, honor to my mom, and honor to the communities of people like me that find themselves in some sort of challenge or situation or disadvantage by the situation that they are or the reality they're facing, but they have an aspiration or an idea out there that they want to like and embark or come across or fulfill, right? So that's kind of like what Project LEDO.
I would like to have been in the room when that mission statement got
Fawn, you couldn't have been in the room when that mission statement came up because that mission statement is a lot deeper than you could ever realize. As I was listening to the brother speak, I tapped into some emotions, and it was kind of, it was long overdue. I think, as a man, I mean, I think what happened to me was that I became your father for a second. and I became very proud of you. How do we, as men, pass that torch that you have? It's part of my life avocation.
Yep.
How do you arrive at a place that allows you to commit yourself to a cause that in most cases and most times it's daunting because of the blight that we see, the people that are in the darkness and the people that are wasted and lost along the way. But then all of a sudden you get, man, when I look at this brother, the size of this brother, I'm saying this brother is 10 feet tall. But when you look at this little package he come in, right, and not to be underestimated, not to be questioned, but the realization is that the capacity that this young cat comes in here with today is what we hope that the next generation of BIPOC people is inheriting. And if they are, look out, world, because the world's got an issue. And I can understand why Donald Trump becomes so prolific at this point in time. Because if the world looks anything like this, and if they're trying to stop this at the border, let me tell you something. This country got some issues.
Yeah.
You understand me? So, but, and for those of you who coming in here legally, and if you're coming with that, it's got some issues too. So
well, no, I mean, it's very
so,
important.
You know.
So, I mean, that's your foundational principles of LEDO. So what is it that, so tell us a little bit about some of the successes that you've been having through that program. What's the program all about, right? I mean, it's taking STEM technology, introducing people. I know you got a partnership with some of this Lego robotics stuff and that kind of stuff. So what's the daily life of the programming? Yeah,
it's thank you for asking that question. I am really honored to be in the leadership of Project LEDO and then funded Project LEDO. And I remember the first couple of times that I had the idea, there was a lot of no's, right? There was a lot of, and that's the resiliency that we build throughout now, impacting. We were just pulling the last year report, and we impacted close to 341 students, 1,500 families. And proudly, 75 to 80% of our population is a BIPOC demographic. We don't restrict programs and curriculum and services to anyone, but we really focus. We are really culture and mission specific. The daily of Project LEDO, we partnered with lots of organization, corporate sponsors. We actually have a new partnership with OMSI. And Intel has supported us, First Tech Credit Union, Free Gig, and all of them. Shout out to all of them that they've done an amazing job to actually fulfill that dream. And we work with the Title I schools in the Portland and public schools in the Beaverton School District. We identify the Title I schools, like the launch assistants, and they have high population at times of BIPOC communities. And we work specifically with immersion schools that they are, immersion into Spanish primarily, because that's kind of where we find ourselves.
And you're getting
Black.
Okay, go ahead.
And Black students, BIPOC in general. And we have programs in the after school that we teach, such as Lego Robotics, which is the heart and soul of our organization, and we are sponsored by Lego Education. We have computer building programs, so they're coming. We had it throughout the summer, and then we're kind of back in it. We teach AI. And the elements of
how old are these kids?
They're fifth grade. We work with K through eighth grade, but our wheelhouse is a fifth grader
with the capability of controlling artificial intelligence.
Well, he's been doing it already. I mean,
am I scared of that?
You should be, like everybody else should be.
I mean, and that's another thing. It's how, and this is core value, how do we teach the students to embrace the technology, but also to be mindful that no technology can take a place of a human experience. Right? So that's kind of that's if I were to say what's the secret sauce of Project LEDO is that, right? How we can inadvertently connect the world in science with the human elements, building core values that you can share and translate to every single work environment.
You know, it's so ironic that, you know, this world feels really lost and hopeless sometimes. And then I think about, you know, the impact that science versus, you know, creationism, how they were always at war. But now I'm seeing science literally taking people back to what you're saying. It's a pathway back to your internal core values. And I find that kind of ironic, right? Because I saw on your website, you know, one of the gentlemen from the robotic, Lego robotics and stuff was talking about one of the girls came to him and was concerned for her mother's job.
Yeah, that's
right. Saying, is my mom going to lose her job to artificial intelligence? And I know a lot of young people are thinking kids coming out of school. I mean, some of us older folks feel maybe secure in, you know, go ahead.
You feel secure where?
Like we could use some help in our jobs.
Yeah.
But for folks just kind of getting involved, how do you respond to something like that? How's your program addressing that?
Yeah, and I mean, and it is scary, you know, like the new world of AI is really scary. And when you are answering to demanding demands versus like answering like what's a real kind of like impact that you will have, especially for big corporations, it is scary because they always want to make money, right?
Yeah, man.
Right.
And but in it exactly that's the point of Project LEDO. Like, let's embrace that, you know, and then build confidence around that. That whenever AI comes, you are well equipped, you're well knowledged, well versed in what you actually this nuance is. That way you can take on. You don't want to be behind.
Yeah.
You want to be moving with the direction that the world is going. And if there is a chance where you can change it for the better, let's do that. That's what Apple started.
Yeah, that's deep, and that's the transition. That's what we call the trench. I mean, because the creator of any technology, the technology will reflect the creator.
That's correct.
And if it's a screwed up, excuse the pun, a fucked up creator, then the shit is gonna be fucked up. And meaning that if the creator has an issue with race, then quite naturally there's going to be something that's going to slant that technology toward addressing that. So and that's why I think I adopted the reality of diversity from the book The Brick, you know? And when that book talked about how much diversity can you really put into a square, a 3x3 square, and that because historically what diversity has always looked like is a bunch of PhDs that had different colors. you know,
that's correct.
You know,
that
but they were all PhDs, right?
That's correct.
But he talked a little bit more about the short, the tall, the ones with big ears, the ones with small ears, you know, eyebrows, pink, all that diversity in that space. And the more of that you can get into that space, the more you have. Now, but the question that I'm still having is, does the sense of technology in its direction, the void or the filtering of that, does it filter culture? Does technology become more of a sterile type of thing that doesn't take any of these things into consideration, and we got to put that stuff in there, or are we creating it to where it takes all elements into consideration?
Yeah, that's the dream, right? I think that's the dream, like the ability for technology to have to be a feedback mechanism instead of the other way around.
Gotcha.
Right? You want to create technology as a feedback from like the community that you are actually working with and impacting. Like it happened so that all around these years, you have been creating technology for the people without taking the accountability of like really do a forward-thinking analysis.
And emojis was the beginning to that conversation, right?
Without including the people in the conversation.
And without including the people in the conversation.
Right,
And when you do that, it's like a completely wrong business model to have.
Right.
You know, like the Promised Land by Obama, it talks about the fact that when he really wanted in aspirations to be in the position where he was to be the leader of the free world, the first advice and the best advice that someone has ever given is like, if you want to do that, just go to the communities and see what the real struggles and what the challenges, what are the opportunities, what are the highlights of this community, and then from there you can extrapolate to make a real change. So back to the question, it's a dance, right, that you have to have, but technology cannot, and I'm a huge advocate for that, be at the forefront of our progress in our it's a tool, but it's not the actual goal or the end goal.
Right. Or to give up control.
Well, yeah, but it's also being wielded. Man, I mean, there's a whole different war above. I mean, look at the current event, right? Over there in Jordan, 3 servicemen dead, 40 injured from a drone. Mm-hmm. Right, from technology, right, from a drone, and we all know we've had it, and it's like, do we use it? Do we use it? Oh, maybe just to target an evil person, but then you cross the line. Yeah. Then you're constantly crossing the line, right? But I'm saying, is somebody creating a software or a technology, drone, robot, or something that is focused on peace, right? On bridging differences, on convening people who have different religious and capital and social needs to come together. It's like, I don't hear those as much in the forefront of the news, because if it leads, it bleeds, right? But I'm sure, with brains like this, and I have a feeling that in R&D in a lot of these tech companies, there are people that are really looking at these ethical issues, right? Without trying to project their particular viewpoints on this, which is so challenging. Yeah. But it's like, how are we shaping, artificial intelligence to address those type of issues?
Yeah, and it's interesting, because if you when we did the tech summit that we had at Silicon Forest, like, shout out to Joseph for putting an amazing event together. Yes. The senior vice president of Microsoft was there, and then he was showing 4 or 5 pictures in that event that they were individuals that resemble the BIPOC demographic, and none of them, they were actual humans. Yeah, there was an AI.
Yeah, I remember scary.
But then the folks promoting that were using that, saying, "Look at all the diversity of our events and
that's
our
correct.
inclusions."
Even before we had AI, they were
real
doing that shit.
And they were not even real people.
Well, I think Travel Portland did that a couple of times. Use fake black people in some of these,
And that is the issue, because it always comes back to all these systems, all these tools that we're building. They're built from a human. We're not like, it wasn't God that came in and built the tool. It wasn't like I don't know, extraterrestrial that come and build a tool. It was actual human. And at times in those R&D rooms and all those places, there's not that demographic that we want to impact.
Thank you.
Oh that's actually
and the
really,
sweet spot.
really true. It's like the whole we could build it, but should we build it, right? And it could be this way, but should it be this way?
And that's what it is. Like in those rooms, and that is why it's so important to have diverse culturally. Yeah. Like, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because if you have like different people, but they all have PhDs, that's the bias right there. So you wanna eliminate or try to eliminate as much biases as you can. Have to really throw out the data and see, okay, how can we create something from this perspective? Because you do not see what your blinds are, but if you have somebody else in the room that can kind of like catch up on that and say, no, hold on a second. Because you will see yourself in a predicament, and that's what those issues are coming to.
Right. And it's the fear, the human experience. And like I said, I go back and I think about this whole, when we look at the lineage or the trajectory of something like this. And I remember that when I was at college, I keep talking about this over the years, which have influenced me, was that there was a geneticist conference, right, on genes and genetics. And there was Cheryl Cress and John Shockley were presenting in these. But when I saw, what they kept showing me was that when they put the three genes together in a gene pool, they put the Asian gene, the coconoid gene, which was the white gene, and the Negroid gene in the same pool, that it came out, and it was right up on this big old screen. I mean, 98% of the time these interactions occur, the Negroid gene will come out dominant. So if I was creating something, and what it triggered in me is that anybody put in that situation would have the fear of extinction. Right? It's a normal fear. It's a natural instinct. And so, yeah, okay, I give them a pass on that, right? Because slavery was still behind all of that. So moving forward, I'm looking at this and I'm going, well, maybe that's why he's upset with us, right? You know, something like that. But I also look at when we build something with our likeness in mind. And all our concerns, all our premeditations, all our perceptions, all these things go into that technology or that thing that we build. And most importantly, it's going to preserve the thing that I fear the most. That thing that might eat me up somehow, I'm going to make sure that that's in my mind. Right? And so when I'm building these things, I'm building these technologies, it's so important for me to have somebody over here on the side of me that says, hey, look here, don't forget this part of it. Okay, because this is, and why? Because it doesn't play a part in my world. But yeah, it doesn't play, but the bigger picture of the world means these things. Okay? And so with that all in mind, man, I keep thinking about the Warriors, man. I think about how we've gotten to where we are today. You know, the whole struggle from slavery, from disempowerment to some form of empowerment, some form of equity, some form of participation. And brother, I'm so glad that there are young men like yourself in these rooms being warriors. Okay, and when I say warriors don't always have to go and attack somebody. Sometimes the lion comes into the village, and a warrior needs to go and deal with that reality of it. And this reality that we're talking about, this AI, is the lion coming into the village. And we need to make sure that we have warriors in the room that says, hey, well, wait a minute now. If you got that robotic tiger running around, and make sure it ain't eating black people. You know what I'm saying? Let it go on and eat the caribou.
And then infusing that into the youth, right? Through programs like LEDO right now, which it's interesting that that you're taking leadership as part of the curriculum for this program.
Because one of the things that you know, like I've exercised a lot of different kind of like experiences in my path into like actually the leadership that I do at Project LEDO, but also when at Apple even. One of the things that we have in common when it comes to leadership, it's the ability to walk into and act upon and make decisions where nobody else can at the time. So and that can be transported into like your life. It can be transported into like your own personal, like your family, your friends, your workplace. You find yourself with a group of individuals, tech-minded, really focused into creating this. But if you don't have a leader that puts the idea somewhat together and guide the whole realm through, you're not going to succeed as much. And that's what we want to these kids to actually to practice and exercise and build upon that. Because like I can give you the codes, I can teach you how to code, I can teach you how to do all these different things, but I cannot teach you how to critical think. I cannot teach you how to be empathetic when an employee comes to you and say, "Hey, I'm having a hard day. And this is making mistakes, and then how can I kind of like bridge that gap?" I cannot teach you how to communicate effectively, right? If you're only focusing on STEM. Once again, like when I said STEM, meaning like in the coding, in the AI, in all these different things. I find myself that at times I'll be leading projects that has nothing to do with the realm of where I graduated from, my background. But it has everything to do to critical think and understand what does this gonna do? What's the impact that this would have? What are the downfalls? What are the biases that I have within myself that I have to remove? And what the critical objective goals for this project to actually be successful?
Whoa. Hey, y'all. Hey, welcome, y'all. This is Black Beat Podcast, y'all. Look, I told you, we're going to go out there and look for it for you. And it's in the room right now. How you doing over there, Director?
I mean,
it
it's
got you
good,
perplexed?
I
because
mean,
this conversation is you and me every day. If
I
somebody
know.
was to follow us around,
know.
I got technology over there, and you got human over here. And so you always try to get me to make sure you're on that. You can speak this part, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, yo, haven't you taken into consideration
So
that
they
people
live together in harmony is what I heard.
Nah, that ain't what we do around here. Anybody that knows us, though, ain't nothing about harmony.
There you go. That's
You
what
know,
it is.
but back
harmonious
to that,
chaos.
back to
Yeah.
that Silicon Forest summit in which you were one of the panelists. What was your biggest takeaway from that? Important because I saw people in there hungry for this, and it was a lot of black and brown people in that room.
My biggest takeaway is, as I always say when I go to this event, and I see a lot of black and brown people in those rooms. I see a lot of minorities in this room. And at times I hesitate to say minorities because we are big. We're
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Minorities in the place that we might not be accustomed to, but we're big, and that is exactly the big takeaway. Like when you put events like this, when you see a lot of folks that they actually doing more work for our community, it brings the power of like community.
Yeah.
It brings the power of like it takes one to know one, to teach one, to share one.
Liberation is what
And
I
you know
call
what?
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Fidel, though, the other thing I noticed was, man, there was so much folks coming from outside of Oregon in Portland. And I wondered, like, John and I did we connected with the Black Student Union back in 2012, right? Because we have this program called the PDX Black Rose Youth Media Project, teaching them, podcasting media. Also, very important foundational principle of our program was if you can control the narrative, you can control the outcome of your
There
own
you go.
story,
Yeah, man.
right?
There you go.
Yeah.
So it was based upon that principle. But when we asked a room full of about 20 young
Yeah, it was
African
20 of 'em
American
in there,
kids
yeah.
and said, how to, raise your hands, how many wanted to go
Into the field of technology.
into the tech field?
Yeah.
Not
That's correct.
one. Second, do you guys ever get to work on computers or this? Oh yeah, we have a room. So we look at this room, it's locked up. They're not every day active. I mean, I'm sure that was 2012. It's probably changing significantly right now. But when people just have the awareness but don't get the practical hands-on experience,
Yep.
But it
being
was more
a
than
guided
that. Fawn. Not to
meditation,
interrupt that, but it was more than that because the thing that I showed you that was apparent to us is because there was over 60% of them had iPhones.
Oh yeah. So
Yep.
they
And they
all
were on
using,
them while
right,
we were asking
right.
that question.
But so in that room, I noticed there was a lot of speakers and participations, or even folks that had come to these tech companies here in Oregon from outside. I just wondered, does Oregon have a problem? Even though we're in the Silicon Forest, connected to the Silicon Valley, connected to Seattle, do we have a problem growing our own technology community?
Enthusiasts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of folks out there that, and shout out to, there's so many organizations that they're trying and aim to do that, and to shorten that gap and shorten that solution, and then create solutions, I would say, for our communities. But once again, it goes back to like sharing those resources and make it available to the communities that they're most impacted. We do, I believe, that have a problem in a sense of like we have an opportunity. I wouldn't call it a problem. I would say we have an opportunity. And I use the word opportunity because when there is a need, we want to address it. And that's the opportunity. That's the place where you want to be. That's the sweet spot. Right? And that's what we're trying to do at Project LEDO, right? Like shorten that gap, make it available. Like when you talk about STEM, you'll think about like all the engineering and all these things, and then people are like math and in science and all that. When you bring Lego robotics, and then you see like the little, like playful cube that you can put the other thing on, and you can build few kind of like things, projects and things like a project-based learning. And then you give them the iPad, the same iPad that they're actually like going on YouTube and watching videos. And then you use that as a way to kind of like say, you see, you're coding. Nothing different from what you're doing right now
You're just using
It's
the tool
you using the tool
differently than
differently.
you had
Exactly.
originally.
And that is what
understood.
exactly. And that's what our community sometimes don't realize. You have a powerful tool in your hand. You're just choosing not to use that tool for your advantage. It's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the reason why I went into media for mental health. Is because I
For your
always got
own
thinking.
mental
No, I thought about after treating them. I said, forget that. I'm going out with them. You know,
That's
you
correct.
know, but no, this whole part about being able to somehow or another show the compatibilities of everyday thinking with and also how our society conveys information. It's mostly cryptic in a lot of ways, right? So as in one demographic who has a college degree and you write a piece of technology, an understanding of an article about some technology, and people got PhDs over here, and then the majority of the people over here don't have PhDs. And if I write this article well enough, I can communicate with these people, but these people are going to miss it.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's why I got into media, because I believe that media can be structured in such a way that you can target it at the people who need the way the information to be come to them. You can give it to them in a way they can understand it to be able to connect it to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But I'm really, when I came in here today, and I'm usually amped and sometimes resistance on a Monday to get on this mic. But you know what, bruh? This has been a real treat for me.
Oh, thank you.
Fidel, man, and hey, and out of all the topics I know nothing about, mostly, I mean, I know a little bit about here and there. I know a little bit about everything here and there, right? But this topic has never really interested me enough to have a conversation until I'm having this conversation with you. And it elicited all the rewarding aspects of a dialogue could have. It took me through a field of intellect. It took me through a field of emotions. It took me through compassion. It took me through a lot of places. But the one thing that I'm really fascinated about is, Fidel, or the question that I keep lurking in my mind, boy, is what you got going on next.
That's exactly the thing.
What's next with you, my brother?
It's interesting because I am asking that question myself, and one thing that I do, as I shared before, is like I don't want to be a platform. I want to create a platform, and that's what I did with Project LEDO. Project LEDO was never meant for me to be the founder and the head. I saw an opportunity and I try to tackle on that opportunity to get some sort of impact. Next for me, I would love to. This is like and I'm a big dreamer and a powerful dreamer, I would say.
It's
right?
okay, boy, dream big.
Next for me, I wanna speak for millions of peoples into the importance of why this work is important first and foremost. I want people to understand that there is an element of fear, but also there's an element of a reward when you kind of like go and embrace resiliency in whatever thing that you put your mind into. I'm not going to say that I don't want to be a motivational speaker because that's not my wheelhouse. But what I do want is to share experiences. I think that experiences are so important and powerful. And if I can share my experience, and if I can share what we've been able to do and accomplish, from the business side to the intellect to the technology side to the emotional side, right? Folks can be hopefully motivated and feel to and pushed to actually do what they do best. Because Howard Schultz says something on the lines of like Howard Stern actually, don't look for what the world wants. Look what make you come alive, because what the world want, it make people come alive.
Nice.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's real, man.
You're building bridges.
Yeah.
So what? But you asked also, was there anything that, that was a great question, John, by the way. What's next for you,
Yes.
kind of stuff.
That's
so.
why you the producer and I'm the job. That's all right. But,
That's right.
but go ahead. You had something?
Well, I was just wondering, so how do people get in touch with LEDO and support it?
Yeah. So there's various of, and I want to shout out to, I want to give a shout out to all like the team and everyone, like Aisha, which is my program manager. She's like amazing. She actually came with me from Apple.
Wow.
Yeah, there's also Carlos that came from Apple with me. They've been following my leadership, and then they've gone through. And this is what it is. Like,
He's a fisher of men.
It's okay. You're
Right.
fishing for something.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know what. But
Justin also, that he saw the vision and he caught up on them. David Perry, who like he was one of the first one who funded us. He was the first one who gave us like $1,000 to our organization, and now he works for me.
Oh.
He used to be executive director for another company, and then he kind of like saw the leadership and all that. But you can get in contact with us by just like going to our Instagram, Project LEDO. It's essentially that at Project LEDO or like projectledo.org. Get familiar with our what we do, and like we always look for sponsors. We have a couple of events coming up, fundraising events with OMC March 21st. We have all these programs that we're building. If you want to donate to a really good cause that make a huge difference in our community, just go into our website and then click the donate button, and then you'll see what $20, $10, $2 can definitely impact the students and the community at large. And like Fidel.Ferrer at projectledo.org, you always can message me and then get in contact with me, and then we should be able to to get something going.
Young man, why your folks name you after that fool that was?
I know. That's that. I was hoping to start that question.
No, you can duck that one, yeah. But I got a better three ones for you. I usually, my producers usually get uncomfortable when I ask these three questions, but it's just something that I believe that once you get up in the ranks, you no longer have to talk about the layman's conversation. The world will ask you three questions as you aspire to your senior, and they will want to know these questions, and it'll come across as rapid fire. Okay, so when I ask you these three questions, I want you to just off the cuff answer them quickly as you want, and just move on to the next one.
Okay.
Speak to me about life.
It's beautiful. Life is beautiful. Life is it's a journey also that individually each one make, and there's a choice within that, right? I think of the element of like choosing to live from the get-go, from the seed that was implanted in your mom's womb. You have the possibility to, you have endless possibility, because that's a powerful seed. You know, like Oprah used to say that that's a powerful seed. Like the fact that it blows my mind at times, even like a biology major, that you're formed for three main layers. You know, all your body, it's formed from three main tissues, and you're powerful in and out itself. And if you have the possibility and capability to come out of your mom womb and make it to this world, there is also a responsibility to fulfill whatever you're meant to be in this world. So that's.
Speak to me about love.
That's I always think about love because we always try to fantasize and idealize what the concept of love. For me, love is what my mom did, and it's also a choice to work hard, to like wake up at 3 a.m. Sometimes we didn't have anything to eat, but she'll make sure that we are provided, that we are well educated, that we are supported emotionally and financially, at times with like lack of resources. That's love for me. Like peace, it's a huge part of that love, because as you mentioned, we don't have peace in the world, we don't have love, right? and that consistency. So like I like to believe that love is finding yourself within that core values and what you want to wrap around it, those core values, and understanding that it's not a fantasy, it's a reality, and the power of choice that you make on that reality, that's what love for me is.
Fidel, speak to me about death.
I've been kind of like at times thinking like if because things happen. Like I have a friend, Marcella, that I was calling her the other day because I haven't talked to her in a while, and then she shared that one of her daughter's son's friend passed away, and she saw him the very previous day, and then he next day overdosed. And it brought her a lot of tears, and then there were she's being really sad over that experience. And when I took from there is like nothing is like forever, and we all know that we are going to die at some point. And when that idea came to my mind, it made me think like what would happen to me if like a car like run me over tomorrow, or like if I take off my plane and the plane never lands, would that be okay with that? Right? And it goes back to life, like if I feel up to this day what I was meant to do and be, that powerful seed from those 3 layers, I think I'll be okay, departing. And that's what I encourage. Death, that's the only constant thing that happen that is in our lives. We all know that we're gonna die at some point. But identify while you're here, what you're here to do, what you're meant to be, and then getting closer to that. I think when the time comes, you will be okay, and at times people are not okay with that, and then it's like stigma, all these different things, and I don't want to put that negative connotation towards it. But death is the only constant thing that we have after we are a powerful seed that is being born, right? And because of that, if we make it out, and if we make it out of that, and then we keep coming and making it out, you gotta fulfill that dream. So that's essentially what.
Man, Bump Brother, thank you very much. Hey, look here, welcome y'all again. This is Black Beat Podcast. I done told y'all we ain't gonna hold nothing back. We're gonna share it with you for what it is, and it's real. If it's gonna be real, it's gonna be real for you and for me. Listen, this has been an exciting episode of Black Beat Podcast, where we're unapologetically black about the comments and the statements and the things and the experiences that we have. And today we had a young brother here that just sort of took me through all of those places in this experience. What do you think, Miss Producer?
Yeah, I
Fawn
think
Aberson?
on this subject of technology, we look at all the moving components, the hardwire of it. A lot of times it brings to mind, how we hardwire things. But I think, what Fidel did today was look at how we are hardwired internally ourselves. Despite that we're made up with these 3 layers, we also come with this soul that's hard to hardwire. Right? You can't really hardwire a soul.
No, that's for sure.
So to leave it out of the conversation, even in this age of technology, probably isn't wise.
Hey, listen, in most places in Oregon, the conversation needs to be had about education. We know all those individuals that come into the room to have that conversation about education. The next time I show up into a room about education, I'll make sure that this brother's in there.
Yeah.
You hear me?
There you go,
Hey, my
for
brother,
sure.
thank you very much
Thank
for coming
you.
out and hanging out with us. And
Fidel
hey,
Ferrer.
Black Beat, we out.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.